Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another Meet Edgar webinar. Today we are so excited to be presenting crafting persuasive social posts that actually sell. And you can see that we are joined by my guest over here, Sean from Eloquent, who's actually going to be the one presenting this webinar. So if we haven't met Sean before, say hello. Serena, Denise, Anita have already found the chat. Hello. Thanks you guys for joining. One of our favorite parts about doing webinars really is creating a community here. So reach out to people who you see you might want to connect with, share your social handles, and share what network and industry that you guys are in so you can meet others and use this as a fun networking experience as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on over to Sean. I'll be in the chat, so feel free to keep it going here, and we'll answer your questions as we go along. So Sean, go right ahead.
Amazing. Thanks for that as well. I really appreciate it. And hey, everyone, I can see you all over there. I can see Rich and Claire, some of our team as well. So thanks everyone so much for your time today. And I'll talk for just a minute or two while we give people time to join. So I'm dialing in from Australia. So have we got anyone from Australia over there in the comments? Whereabouts are you all from? Yeah. I got some Sydney people in there. Represent. It's awesome. Cool. Gold Coast. South Australia. Oh, hey, Georgina. NYC. That's amazing. It's and Wollongong, Hobart. Awesome. Represent. I love my Aussies. Portugal. I'd love to go to Portugal, JP. That's amazing. Canada, you're our cousins. You're our spiritual cousins from Australia. So I love that too. Hey, so everyone, thanks so much today. And this is before I jump into the content, this is a real treat for me. When I was starting out, my own entrepreneurial journey, I probably like you guys, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts, listen to a lot of webinars. And so I learned about Meet Edgar from when Laura, the founder, was out doing a lot of podcasts as well, probably 5-6 years ago. Hey, Karen, I can see your LinkedIn connection there. I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to do that. I'm going to open it in another window and introduce myself after this. But yeah, so I used to listen to Laura on my way to work and on my way to my day job back in the day. And so, a few years on down the line, having the opportunity to be here and speak to all of you and be a part of this community is, I'm really excited about. In our business, we've been using Meet Edgar for probably 4 years and love it. And so today I've put together some content that my commitment is that I want to make sure today is super tangible. I want to make sure it's practical. Hey, everyone, I can see you all joining there. That's awesome. I just want to make sure that it's super useful for you guys, right? I want to make sure that you can get the most out of this content. You'll find that at the beginning, I'm going to be talking, there'll be a little bit of science. I'll try to make it fun. But then we're going to dig into what's the practical application look like for that, and then specifically how you can start to apply these things inside of Meet Edgar. I can see Candace. I think there will be a replay. I can see a question over there in the comments. So we're going to have a replay for you. I think Megan's going to send that out for everyone. So looking forward to having you here. I'm going to pull up the slides here. Hopefully you can all see that well. Let's check that this works. Amazing. So today we're going to be talking about creating persuasive social posts that actually sell, right? So we're going to be looking at how you can start to apply sales psychology and even some of these principles of neuromarketing to help you turn your audiences and help you turn that attention and help you turn that clicks into customers, but also in a really ethical way, right? So you're going to be really comfortable with all of the things that you're going to see. It's just about helping you be more persuasive, helping you grab attention, and helping you communicate better with your audience and with people. And so there's 3 different sections or 3 different acts that I want to go through today. So the first is we're going to spend a bit of time understanding the hidden processes that our brain follows when making decisions. And so the idea of this is going to then set this groundwork or this framework for understanding how our brain actually makes a decision. It will probably surprise you. Once we understand how our brain works and how those decisions work, then we're going to start to look at, with that in mind, then what are some of those buy buttons there? What are those things that live inside of our brain that influence us to buy and to say yes and to be persuaded and to be influenced? And how do we start to use those? And then in the that third act, we're then going to go, all right, well, how do you use this, right? So what are some practical examples of how you can apply this, and specifically audio's gone, we're back on. I bumped the microphone. So I'm going to make sure that you're able to use these things practically and tangibly inside of your business as well. Whoop, I can see the audio's gone, but it was back. Okay, so who am I and why do I get to speak about this stuff? So my name's Sean Withford. I've had about 20 years in sales and marketing, one of the co-founders of an agency called Eloquent. We've run over 700 profitable campaigns over the last 3 years. And what we do has evolved a lot over that time. So, we probably started as a social media agency, evolved into inbound, evolved into demand generation, evolved into automation, just as we on this quest to deliver results, right? So it's changed a lot. Prior to this business, I was actually one of the first employees for LinkedIn across Australia. Marty laughing at my below average server. And look, below average is still like a bold statement. I was one of the first employees at LinkedIn. So I was number 4 here across the Asia Pacific region. So back in the early days, probably going back about 9 years now. But when I was there, and this is the part where you got to brag and these sorts of things, but, won a whole bunch of awards for top rep in the region and the globe and, got flown around for the president's clubs and all those sorts of things. And then ran one of the sales teams there inside of LinkedIn. And then they won a whole bunch of awards for top performers. They were actually one of the, I can see Melody, we've got Unilever in common. That's awesome. My team were there, were one of the first in the globe to hit their annual quota, right, for these SaaS teams. And they're competing, these big enterprise grade SaaS teams. So it's filled with people from Salesforce and all those sorts of businesses. And I actually started out my career in a big brand ad agency, but I worked on brands like Microsoft. I actually did the Microsoft Xbox launch in Australia for anyone that likes the consoles. Worked on a bunch of the different Unilever brands here in Australia. Worked on Coca-Cola, and then I'm a dad. I've got 3 kids, so they're like rest in peace, Halo from JP. I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Live about an hour north of Sydney, but we actually work with a bunch of clients all across the globe. The time difference still works, and yeah, I'm still a pretty average surfer, as many people seem to have already pointed out in the comments. So that's me, and what I'm going to do is if you stick around to the end as well, we've actually put together a reading list. So I've got all of these top books and recommendations. I'm just going to bring it up on the page so you'll be able to see it there. But it's just, if you want to go deeper into this stuff, obviously we've only got a finite amount of time today, but we're going to have that there for you. So if you want to learn more about sales psychology, neuromarketing, and some of my favorite books, if you want to get a grounding in this stuff, then you'll see that there as well. All right, guys, so let's dig into it. So first of all, let's talk about knowing and understanding the hidden processes that our mind follows when it's making decisions. And so this is really just building out the framework and the basis for understanding what the brain does. And so when we look at the brain, our brain is actually 3 brains sitting on each other's shoulders, pretending to be an adult, right? So, because what happens is different parts of it evolved over time. So we've got our brain up the back, our reptilian brain. We've then got our next brain that evolved, our mammalian brain. And then at the front, we've got our rational brain. And so let's have a look at how those different brains talk and how they actually work together. So first of all, I want to introduce you to your reptilian brain. So reptilian brain's also known as the dinosaur brain. It's referred to sometimes as the ancient instinctive brain. It's referred to as the hind brain. It's actually a collection of brain structures. It's not just one thing that lives there at the back of your brain, connects to the spinal cord. This is some of the science, but I promise you'll enjoy where it's taking you. That reptile brain, it looks after things like your reflexes. It looks after muscle control. It looks after balance and breathing, right? It's looking after your heartbeat right now. Things like your reproduction drives and hunger, like all of those things that essentially are happening on autopilot, right? That's back there in that lizard brain. An important thing to learn about it is that it processes information first based on senses. So what it can see, what it can hear, what it can feel, what it can touch. That's what it cares about. But it doesn't know or care about anything rational or logical, right? So it's up the back and it's making decisions there for you. And it's the part of you that does things subconscious. Yeah, I can see JP over there. Everyone's hyper aware of things subconscious, right? So If you drive home the same route every day, the reptile brain is the one that takes over, right? That's how you can drive home and not remember really how you got home, because that instinctual brain just took control, took the lead, right? It's also the part of the brain that, like, if you find yourself like standing in front of the fridge at 10 o'clock at night, like eating stuff out of a tub, and not knowing how you got there, that was your reptile brain too, right? It called the shots. It's like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And then like the front of your brain's left wondering like what just happened, right? So that's its job. It's constantly scanning the environment around you, and it's thinking, is this new or novel, right? So it's looking for things that it needs to look at, or things it needs to engage with. Is this new or novel? It's the part of your brain that's saying, hey, is this threatening? Right? Like, is this, is this a risk to me? And it's also looking around for things that are desirable, right? Be it food or a new friend. And so that's what our reptile brain's job is. So it's spending its day looking at those things. I'm going to give you a little bit of the science that then's going to surprise you and then show you the insight of what that means for marketers. So Lawrence Williams, Lawrence now teaches at the University of Colorado, but Lawrence designed this study back when he was completing his doctoral studies at Yale. And so they invited people in for a study, and on their way into the study, they're in the lift, and there's a person with them, and they says, "Excuse me, can you just hold this drink? I've just got to jot down some notes." And people are briefly just given to hold this person's drink. Half of them are given an iced coffee to hold, and then the other half of them are given a warm cup of coffee on their way into the room. And so, you can imagine you hold this person's drink, you get into there, you give that drink back to them, and then they don't realize, of course, that that's part of the study. Then as they arrive to the room, the person takes that drink and they sit them down and they say, hey, here's a photo of a person. I'd just love it if you could write a description of what you think their personality is like, just based on their photo. Yeah. So everyone's given the same photo. They've just got to look at this photo and just write what they think this person's like. Half of them have had the warm coffee. Half of them have had the iced coffee. So of course you may guess ahead, right? The people that have held the warm coffee, they're looking at this photo of someone and they say that that person is more genuine, more personable, more warm, right? So if they've held this warm thing, all of a sudden they're associating that with this photo of a person. For then the other half of the people who have seen the photo of the exact same person, had the exact same experience, the only difference is that they held an iced coffee on their way in. Of course, they describe that person in the photo as more cold and more aloof, right? And so what's happening here? It's actually, we've got this reptilian brain up the back that's making assumptions about the world around us based on things that it can feel that are crazy, right? Like everyone looked at the same photo, but just had different opinions and perspectives on that exact person just based on the temperature of like the drink that they held. And there's an insight here, right? And so the insight for us as entrepreneurs, as marketers, as product owners, as salespeople, let's think about this, right? So first of all, you've got this lizard brain and it's making decisions on these tangible sensors. And it's also responsible for what we call gut feel. There's some new research coming out that some referring to the gut as the fourth brain as well. But it's that part of the brain up the back that's making decisions about these things. Your lizard brain actually cares a lot about design, right? Because it's the lizard brain that appreciates design because it feels that good aesthetics builds trust and it reinforces that something's safe or valuable. If anyone here has ever like unboxed or opened an Apple product like an iPhone, right? It's the lizard brain up the back that just delights in the way that as you like lift that box up, like all of it all fits together so perfectly, and just it loves the weight and the curved edges and the feel of like the aesthetic of holding that thing, right? It's your lizard brain that actually loves design and cares a lot about that. The other insight here is that the lizard brain often is just running you on autopilot, but it is scanning for things that are novel or new or different or unique. And so just to introduce a concept for all of you, if you've ever heard of the phrase of a pattern interrupt, so that's showing someone something like an image that's striking or a little bit different or just something surprising. So a pattern interrupt actually makes the lizard brain pay attention to the thing that you're about to show them, right? And so by me having a pattern interrupt at the beginning, right, like here's 3 dogs wearing a trench coat, that's not something something that we usually see. And so that actually makes our brain go, oh, I should pay attention to this, right? So that's actually a type of pattern interrupt where that lizard part of your brain says, all right, well, I want to learn a little bit more. And so we're going to learn about how we can apply some of these things later. Then you've got this next part of our brain, right? The mammalian brain. Again, it's a collection of structures. It's not just one thing. It's also known often as your limbic system. But you've got in there the amygdala, and that assesses risk. And it basically, the amygdala mostly tries to help us get out of trouble. So if we hear a loud noise, the reptilian brain says, what was that? And the mammalian brain says, it's okay, it was a car backfiring, everything's cool. So they have that conversation together quickly. It's the part of our brain that pays a lot of attention to motivations and rewards and threats. So when we hear about dopamine and cortisol and serotonin, those things are happening in that mammalian brain. This mammalian brain, right, it evolved to help us live in groups. So one of the main things that this mammalian brain spends its time doing is looking at our status and the status and connection of other people. And so it's spending all of its time saying, is this my friend? Like, do I trust this? Do others trust this? Will this improve my status? Is it going to lower my status? Will other people approve of this decision? So this mammalian brain cares all about these things, right? And so it's constantly looking at these. And we're going to come back and spend a little bit more time of looking at this. But the main thing to understand here is that part of our brain, that group collective brain, it loves, when it's making purchase decisions, it thinks a lot about social status. It also thinks a lot about risk aversion, and it cares about what the tribe or the herd are doing as well. We're going to come back and talk about that. And then there's this third part of the brain. And I promise these are the last parts of our brain, then we get to the marketing stuff. So then we've got the rational brain. And so this is actually, again, a collection of structures. You've got your prefrontal lobe and your neocortex. People often refer to this brain as the rational brain, the decision-making brain, the genius brain, the executive brain. Neocortex has the creative, prefrontal lobe has language and logic, complex processing. The rational brain is kind of the walnut-looking thing that if you imagine looking at a picture of a brain, the rational brain or that is the walnut-looking stuff that wraps around the other two, right? It's almost over them like a helmet. The rational brain, it looks after language and logic, but to be honest, it spends most of its time trying to justify what the reptile brain and what the mammalian brain just did. Yeah, so it's been, the rational brain spends a lot of time rationalizing, but it doesn't really know that that's what it's doing. So thinking back to that example before, if I held a warm cup of coffee and then I describe someone as warm, the rational brain doesn't know that's why it's explaining that person as warm. It's just making that decision. And so think of the rational brain. It does look after logic and it does look after language, but it spends a lot of time justifying the decisions that your reptile and your mammalian brain have already made. Yeah, so it spends a lot of time. And so you may agree with this, you may not, but I want to tell you a story about Elliot. So Elliot was this super high-performing executive. He was really happily married, had kids. He was really wealthy. He had an IQ in the top 3%. But then one day, Elliot had a small tumor removed from his frontal lobe, right? Just a small tumor. But things changed for Elliot after that point in time. So Elliot lost his job because he just couldn't perform at work anymore. He got divorced. His personality changed, and it was challenging for his family. He actually lost his house when he was scammed by a con man, so he lost most of his wealth as well. And then Elliot started being investigated by the tax office too, right? So he had all of these problems once this little part of his brain at the front had been removed. And so he was referred to doctors because obviously this wasn't the pattern of what had been happening in Elliot's life before. And so they went and they could tell that Elliot was different. They did a lot of tests. They found that Elliot still had an IQ that put him in the top 3%, so he could still pass these different IQ tests. But his doctor found that like he now suffered from what the doctor called pathological indecision. Yeah. So once this small part at the front of Elliot's brain was removed, he suffered from pathological indecision. And so here's what Elliot used to do, right? If Elliot was asked to write something down, he would spend an hour trying to choose whether to use a blue or a black pen. He'd like to debate the benefits of each, which one was better, which one was going to be more readable, which one had more ink. If Elliot was going out for lunch, he would walk into a restaurant, he'd sit down, he'd read the menu, he'd work out if he was on the best table there, he'd look around and work out how quickly it would take to serve him. And then he'd walk out the door and he'd go to another restaurant and do exactly the same thing. And then he'd walk out the door of that restaurant and go to another one and do exactly the same thing. But he couldn't choose where to eat, right? And Elliot's doctors, they would give him, as part of this test, like trying to work out what had happened to Elliot, they'd give him a calendar and say, hey, Elliot, we're entirely free. But you can book in any time with us in the next month. Come see us again. When would you like to do? And Elliot would sit there for half an hour and debate the value of different times and different days. And like Elliot wasn't working, had nothing else to do, but he just couldn't choose a single day, right? And so what had happened in Elliot's brain, right, is his brain would make endless and also very intelligently, it would debate the pros and cons of every single choice, but it was no longer capable of making one. Yeah. So his brain could very intelligently at a high level weigh up pros and cons, but could never actually make a decision. And really what doctors and then scientists learned is that when this connection between this emotional part of the brain and this rational part of the brain was severed, so was Elliot's ability to make decisions. Now, Damasio worked with Elliot. This research was about 20 years ago. And then after seeing Elliot, Damasio then worked with, over the years, another 50 or 60 people like Elliot who had these brain traumas between this connection between the front of the brain and the emotional part of the brain. And it really upended what everyone knew about our brain and how it works, because what scientists used to think up until probably 15 years ago is that the front of our brain was the super smart bit, and emotions tended to cloud our judgment and feelings clouded our judgment. And if we were all like Spock, like perfectly rational, but with no emotions, then we'd be able to make better decisions, right? I can see Renell, this is scary. You're not as bad as Elliot. More proof that women make better decisions. I don't disagree. But right, so it upended what we knew about our brain. So what we used to think was that we had a smart bit at the front and then our emotions pulled us in different directions. Actually, though, what we learned on the basis of Damasio's research is that all decisions actually are made emotionally. So all decisions are emotional. You've got a rational bit up the front that does make some pros and cons, but then it feeds back to the emotional part of the brain that makes the decision. So the reptile like chooses if you pay attention, if it's novel, if it's different. It then gives this information to the mammal brain, your monkey brain, your herd brain that works out what other people are going to think. It gives it to the rational brain, which has a bit of a think about it. And then it sends it back to the emotional brain to make that call, right? So actually all of those decisions are happening at an emotional level, right? And as soon as you disconnect emotions from rations, no decisions occur. And I've spent a bit of time here, but I really just wanted to get everyone in this space that all decisions are emotional, right? The grounding of all of them is emotional. And we've got a crazy dinosaur up the back and we've got a genius Spock up the front that are having a little bit of input, but those decisions are happening there in the middle. And so then for all of us, as we think about our sales, as we think about our marketing, as we think about our products, if you think about your website, if you think about our landing pages, if any of you are product creators here, so if you've made your thing, it's so easy to spend all of our time talking about the product and what it does and how it works and what the features, and because you've lovingly crafted those things, whether by hand or virtually, and included them into your product. So we care so much about those things, but what we need to recognize is that for our audiences, all of those decisions are emotional. Yeah. So with that understanding in mind, right, like now let's move through to this next phase, right? So if all decisions are emotional, how do I engage people's emotions? How do I engage people's emotions as part of telling them about my brand, my products, my story? How do I get that in there? Before I jump in, I can see, some people having a chat over here in the comments as well. Is this stuff interesting for you? Is this useful? Let me know over there. I'm really needy, so I need to hear from you guys if you love it. Yeah, I can hear Karen saying a yes. Yep, Cheryl, thumbs up. Jamie, all right, that's awesome, cool. I just wanted to make sure. It's hard when I can't see you guys, right? I need that feedback. I've got to love some clappy signs. I love it. Interesting, but a bit protracted. You'll like the next bit, so let's jump into it. All right, so next we know that about the brain. We're cool with that. How do we start to use this? Yep. There's two ways. So we can look at the complex and comprehensive understanding of our brain. Megan, I'll ask you if you can, there's a hyperlink down the bottom here. But this is the Cognitive Bias Codex by John Manoogian. Don't worry, this is a resource for those that want to go deeper. John Manoogian, what he looked at was all of these are different studies in neuromarketing and sales psychology, but he had a look at them and then grouped them. Thanks, Brian. Good stuff. That's awesome. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, if you could just pop it in there, that way people can see it. It's impossible to read this. And then also that full version that you'll see in the link, it's actually got explanations for all of these. But there is this Cognitive Bias Codex. I wanted to give you a really definitive resource on all of the different studies and the psychology and what it means and how we use it. Hey, Renelle, that's awesome. Thank you. I love that feedback over there. So Megan will share this just so you've got it, and that link's there in the slides there too. So open that up in another tab and you can go deep. But what I want is to make sure that we've got something practical here that you guys can actually go use. So this is a more applicable understanding, and this is actually we sort of combine the thing that you just saw and then this into our business. There's a phenomenal book called Influence. It was written by Dr. Robert Cialdini, and it's called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. And then this is absolutely one of my, I see from Ellen there, still can't read it. If you press the plus button, usually on your browser, you'll be able to zoom in a little bit on those. But yeah, so the 7 Principles of Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini, it's my favorite book of all time. It's my most gifted book of all time. So when I had that top performing sales team at LinkedIn, this is the book that I gave everyone, and they found it super useful. And basically Dr. Cialdini, in his first book, Influence, identified these 6 principles of why people did things. And this book wasn't about sales and marketing, it was about the science of humans. And then his second book, which came out more recently, only about 3 years ago, called Persuasion. And I'll show you down the bottom, we've got the reading list there. There was another principle called Unity. But basically there's these principles, likeness, we like people like us. Social proof is there evidence of other people doing things, we like it too. Scarcity, if things are running out, we want them. Congruence or consistency, if we think we're a certain type of person, then we can do things. Authority, so authority is we're more likely to believe people in power. Reciprocity, if people give us things, then we're more likely to feel a desire that we have to give back to them. And then unity, people rallying around a cause or a greater good. So those are the different principles. And then rather than talk about them a lot here, what I'd actually love to do is then just show you some practical examples of how you can then turn this into social posts, and then how you can use it. There we go. I can see JP's put the cognitive bias cheat sheet down there, man. That's awesome. I'll check that out afterwards as well. I'm going to open up JP's link over there in another tab, so I've got that there to have a look later. And in fact, and there you can see there, I'm the kind of geek that goes to events. So we go to Traffic and Conversion Summit every year. It's over in San Diego, although it wasn't this year, obviously because of COVID. But I spot, I'm the kind of nerd that spots a PhD scientist of a book 20 years old out the front of a hotel and says, that's Dr. Robert Cialdini, and run and get a photo with him. Yeah, he's a really, really good guy. So how can we actually take those different psychology principles and then use them to craft persuasive marketing and sales posts, right? So we understand the brain, we understand those books and references there that you can go find. Awesome. Thanks, Serena. I love that you wrote those. But let's just dive in and have a look at how you can go implement this yourself, what it looks like when you're implementing marketing, and then how you can use it in Meet Edgar. So when we think about all of our customers, right, all of our customers have a different problem to solve. And so you've probably gone through a process where you've built out an audience persona. And if you haven't, you should. And you can see here, this is an example of one of the personas that we use. Sometimes when people build out an audience persona is just like this avatar or what your ideal client might look like. And we look at things like, there's a little bit of demographics, but mostly we should pay attention to the psychographics. Yeah. So what are the outcomes that they're looking for, and their fears and frustrations and their current objections and their personality traits. And, and some of these things are really useful for working out your targeting, but understand who your ideal audience is. But then the next thing that we need to do is, I think that people make a bit of an error when we build audience personas, because let's say that your ideal audience is this CEO, but there's different scenarios under which that person actually buys. Yeah. So this, like, for one CEO, they might be interested in actively looking and, comparing your product to others. So that's a certain type of client. You might find that same person, that CEO, isn't looking for a solution like yours, nor are they interested in one. So that's like a different scenario or a different path that they're in the buyer journey. And then there's this third scenario. So let's say that they've bought something before, they've been burnt by the process, and they're actively not interested. Yeah, they're a little bit concerned or a little bit fearful about buying your thing. So you map out that audience persona, you map out those different scenarios under which they might buy. And then we've got this wheel here. I can see people asking for these stuff over in the comments. It'll all be there for you. I can see there from Drew, wants to understand how this is going to be useful for certain products or crafts. For sure, man. So what you do is, Drew, you map out who your person is. In fact, hey, Drew, over in the comments, tell me what your product is, or your solution or service. I'm going to do this for you. Drew, you write? Do you write for certain types of clients or audiences? We've got Kerry's compliance software. Generally, whatever interests you. So health. All right, cool. And so who's buying or reading your writing around like health and learning? Sorry, everyone. It's just like, hopefully I can make it a really practical example that sound really useful for you. I can see people here, products in like travel, home remodeling, compliance software. I'll try to come up with some examples. Anxiety for kids, photography, marketing. All right, cool. There's a lot of stuff here. But let's here we go. So Drew's got around about 300 people writing for those audiences, range of different things, right? So we'd map out who that person is, and then we say under what scenarios are they interested in buying my writing. And so we'd say, all right, well, some people interested who are love my writing are interested in maybe it's particular genres, or maybe if you're doing how-to stuff, or there's particular outcomes. So you'd map these things out, right? And then what you do is on this wider wheel, then what we do is we look at these different principles of psychology and we say, all right, well, how can I use the principle of likeness, people like me, and how can I create an ad for that? How can I make sure that I'm using that in my social posts? How can I make sure that I'm using it in my products? How can I make sure that I'm using it on my landing pages? Scarcity, right? So it's this drive that, we love that there's only a few things, only a few positions left. So I can see Karen's a business consultant there. So Karen, how I would use scarcity as a business consultant is if each month you did a free consultation with what looked like your ideal customer, it's usually valued at X dollars, but each month you only give away 3. So make sure that you grab one of those now. And I can see Drew's talking about people for self-improvement and curious times, right? So unity is this principle of, hey, we're a part of something bigger. And so for Drew, if you wanted to use the principle of unity for people who are interested in learning, what I'd be doing there is I'd be crafting ads around we're passionate about lifelong learning, right? And so if I'm a lifelong learner, I'm appealing to this broader, deeper principle. Or with social proof here, Drew, for if you're writing about self-improvement, using social proof, an example of that would be, discover why, 326 lifelong learners loved this book, right? That's an example of starting to use social proof. Or authority, right? So Drew, if you've got particular background, experience, qualifications, you can call on those. Drew, using micro commitment for your writing can be doing something like, hey, you can get the first chapter for free, check it out. Like, it's a really small commitment, right? So that's using that principle of micro commitment there. So you can see there that once I know who my audience is and who I'm talking to, I can start to work my way around this wheel and use those principles in my sales, in my marketing. And so I'm going to show you some more examples there as well, right? So let's like dig into it. So there's this, let's talk about this first principle of likeness. This is not a real Meet Edgar ad. I just made it up for you guys because I wanted to like show you how Meet Edgar might do it, because it's a product we're all familiar with. So I'm just going to check how I'm doing for time. Loads of time, cool. So likeness is this principle that we prefer to say yes to people that we like, and we prefer to say yes to people that we have similarities with, right? This is our mammalian brain there. And so I'm glad you like it, Megan. And so when you uncover genuine, it's all yours. You can have it. There's no copyright. You can I'll send you the ad. You can like get it on brand. So when you uncover the genuine similarities with the person that you want to influence, that builds rapport, it increases influence. So if you think about like whenever you first meet a person, you naturally start to try to find, oh, you went to that school, so did I. Oh, you know that person, so did I, right? What we try to do when we build rapport with people is find those similarities, right? And that's the psychological principle of likeness at play, which lives inside of our mammalian brain, because we're trying to like establish trust. You know that person, I know that person. Now we're part of the same tribal group, so this thing's safe, right? And so the marketing insight here, it's a little bit marketing commitment, micro commitment as well, right? Is that micro commitment with Meet Edgar? Smart, I like it, JP. So you can see down here, right? Like, so as for you as entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, marketers, the first thing I'd say is that like being human and sharing your original founder story can really help build likeness with your audience. Laura for Meet Edgar did a really great job of this. When you're sharing more of your founder story, people relate with similar hopes, dreams, fears. That helps building the trust as well. And then you can see here as well, like using video, the thing that I would suggest is really making sure that you're using videos just as this human touch, right? It makes your business more personal. It helps people draw similarities between you and yourself. That's awesome. And so looking at this as a little ad unit, right? So the first thing that we've used, selected, is one that's got, I'm going to be fully transparent. I found this in Canva, right? So you guys can go do this as well. We've got a team of graphic designers and stuff, but for this presentation, I went and found this in Canva. Nice striking colors so that I know it's going to pop. The word discover is really deliberate because it encourages people to have a look at what's happening. But you can see this here. Like, so if I use the word 2,346 entrepreneurs just like you, choose Meet Edgar, right? And this ad is drawing on that principle of likeness, yeah? Entrepreneurs just like you or just like us, right? And so when you say things like that, it really speaks out to the person because I'm like, oh, that's for me, right? It's really useful. And so I've got striking image that attracts my lizard brain. I've then got likeness, entrepreneurs like me, choose this thing. Also, by using a really specific number, for us as humans, you'll find this in the Manoogian content, the Codex. People are a lot more likely to believe a specific number. And then just this little bit down here, we empower entrepreneurs to massively grow their business using social media in less than an hour a week. That's actually for the rational brain, right? Lizard brain, mammalian brain, rational brain. Get their attention, show that others like them, use it, and then satisfy that little piece of the brain at the end. So that's how you can start to use these principles in ads. That's how you can see how we've used in likeness there. Let's look at social proof, right? And so people will look to the actions of others to determine their own. Yeah. They're going to be more likely to say yes if they can see that other people are saying yes too. And we believe in the wisdom of the crowd, right? There was a super interesting study about this where basically they got 3 people to just go into, I can't remember where the city was, and look up. And sure enough, then the 4th and 5th person comes and looks up as well, trying to see what they're looking at. And all of a sudden, there's like 30 people all looking up in the sky, trying to work out what this thing is. And it was just actually this principle of social proof. Few people looking up made everyone else do it too. What does this mean for all of us as marketers and business owners? It means that testimonials, case studies, and reviews, they're all always going to improve your conversions and make really good social posts. You have to be including them in all of your home pages, your landing pages, your social posts, your ads, your email sequences. Make sure you're using social proof in all of those. It's really powerful. You can use videos or the written word. I do really like videos. They just feel more authentic. I've got a question there from Karen. Does it matter if you don't have the testimonial in video, but text with their initials or their first name? Use what you've got. The more specific, the better. Yeah, so I would say that a video with full name is better than text with initials, because text with initials feels less authentic, but testimonial or social proof beats no social proof. And you can see how we start to use these things, right? So client's landing page, just some of our happy clients, we'll get, we'll run Google review campaigns and then take those little quotes from people. In fact, and so to Karen's question before, this is just like taken from one of their Google reviews, and we just, you know, put the person's first name on there and used it. So you can still can. Whereas over here, like for us, we'll do video testimonials with our clients as well. But make sure that you're leveraging social proof, and I'll show you how you can use this in Meet Edgar next. One of these next, yeah, Karen, LinkedIn recommendations, awesome idea. But yeah, so Serena, yep, you definitely, you can use them from Google reviews. If you don't have someone's permission, you know, just do that thing, like, you know, their initials or whatever. If you've got a LinkedIn recommendation, so you can go onto LinkedIn, request a bunch of recommendations from people that you've worked with, and then use those after the fact. And, you know, you can use little quotes from people. I usually ask someone's permission. But yeah, from this scarcity. And so let's like talk about this next principle, right? Scarcity. So we can see like people, if something is rare or scarce or dwindling, like we want it. Right, like if you know, if I've like, you know, I've got 3 kids and 2 chocolates, there's going to be a problem, right? Because it's a scarce resource. That's why, from a marketing perspective, things like limited edition, limited time offers, countdown timers, all of those things really help improve conversions due to this principle. Also, you'll often see people when they're you know, selling their products and doing their thing. You know, the first 10 people get this extra thing, right? And so they're creating scarcity, but at the beginning of the sales process to get a little bit of movement. So the first 10 people or the first 10 people get this. There's the early bird offer. All of those are examples of scarcity, and it's just built into our brain as well. So you can see here, right? Like, and these are just some of our like social post and client things, and it might be a little bit tricky to read there, but you know, the countdown is on, right? It's just like leading a social post with that. You know, this thing's on for the next week only. We've only got 10 things. Question there. This is really interesting, right? So what are your thoughts on simulated scarcity, right? Particularly in digital context. Examples of this, like, so I hate, I'm not a big fan of fake scarcity. Just because it's fake, right? And it feels less genuine. Some things are legitimately scarce. So I wouldn't, but then there's ways that you can build it into things, but you have to be, it has to be truthful, right? So if you say that 50 people are allowed to attend a thing, then it's got to be 50. If you say that an offer closes on this day, then it's got to close. So yeah, like, to what Karen said there, it speaks to our integrity. I entirely agree. But yeah, like, so for scarcity, it absolutely works, but I don't fake it. I think there are some people that do good jobs of it. Like, I know people that if they're running live training online, if you're a coach or something, just having, so you know that you can effectively only run coaching with 20 people, and so you limit the numbers at that. Or you know that you need to move people through in a particular cohort, and that's going to start in 3 weeks' time. And so after that point of time in 3 weeks, that, you know, there's no more applications, that's real scarcity. If you don't do it by this day, then it's gone. If you've got Boxing Day sales, that, you know, they used to just happen on Boxing Day, or, you know, it happens a lot more now. But right, like, you know, it happens on a day and then that thing's gone. So scarcity, it does work, but I would say use it with integrity to maintain how people feel about you. Yeah, Ellen, like, I'm really happy for you to get a copy of the slides. Megan's got them all there. The next principle of sales psychology is unity. This is the one that it's very similar to likeness. So unity moved, it's likeness is often this surface level thing. You know Jenny, I know Jenny too. Unity is when people draw together around a stronger or more powerful belief. If anyone follows Russell Brunson, he talks about your cult, your culture, but he breaks out the word cult to make the point. Ellen, John, I do CrossFit. I love that little meme there, right? And there's the guy that you can see here, walks past all of the empty urinals. All guys know that there's rules about which urinal you're allowed to stand in when it's empty. But you can see that there, right? Like, the guy gets there at the end and he's like, I do CrossFit, right? Right? CrossFit, right, is absolutely a cult with unity around it, right? Like, you become a CrossFitter, right? And it's part of your identity, right? And this unity thing is really powerful. Like, you know, bands do this. You know, if you think about what was it, Lady Gaga, right? She used to refer to all of her fans as her little monsters, but that became part of their identity, and they were this group of people. Megan today, when we all got on, was talking about unity, right? Like, we're all part of this community of entrepreneurs that are like, you know, and it's, you know, it's not the best of times for a lot of us at the moment, but we as a unit, as a team, are pulling together to achieve these things. That's unity. If we can, hey Judy, West Australia, awesome. The main insight here is that if you can find a collective course that runs deep, a collective cause or a worthy cause that runs deeper than just your product, it's really powerful. People love it. That's why Tom's shoes, I think, is a really good example. You know, like when someone would buy a pair of Tom's shoes, they then bought another pair of shoes for someone in South America in need, right? So they're really awesome examples. Lady Boss. So Lady Boss, she's a fitness coach. She's done something like 260,000 customers for different products and challenges and programs. Like, she's done a phenomenal job. But all of that's built around, like, actually, like, this Lady Boss movement, right? If we've got time, I think she actually really masterfully uses a lot of these principles. So we'll jump in and I can show you some of those examples there. Authority, check it out. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette, right? This ad used to run, right? You can see down here, the doctor's choice is America's choice, right? So that's it's a terrifying example of using authority. Where if doctors, that's what they smoke, then that's what you should smoke too, right? And so authority, please don't do that, but authority, like, so people are more likely to say yes to those who they believe have legitimate authority in a subject. I can see that from Melanie, 9 out of 10 dentists. So I was going to use that example, but I wasn't sure if it was just in Australia versus like all of the world, but that was a classic ad, right? Like, it was 9 out of 10 dentists choose Colgate. I can still remember it. I'm 40 now, but like, it would have been when I was a kid. So that 9 out of 10 test ad is a really, really good example where, and actually, like, and there's a dark side to this stuff too. Like, if anyone studies psychology and hears about the Milgram studies, like, basically they could get university students to, like, well, it was pretend, but they were torturing people. But if a person with a lab coat asked them to do it, then they would. And if the person didn't have the lab coat on, they wouldn't, right? It was like, if you look at the Milgram studies, it's fascinating. I can see, like, Mexico, the ad's still running. Like, yeah. So all of these are authority. Some of those, like, if you think about 3 out of 5 choose Trident, that's social proof. But if you think about doctors choose camels, that's authority, right? Because you're using the doctor principle there. Or dentists choose Colgate, you're using the dentist authority. What this means for you guys as marketers, sharing credentials early helps you persuade your audience to get them to a yes. It means that stuff like thought leadership content really helps build out your perceived authority. And also, like, make sure that you're using those authority logos on your websites, your landing pages, your product pages. They will absolutely and really have an influence on your conversion rates. Making sure you're checking out those as well. Now, the last thing is reciprocity, right? So people feel an obligation to give back when they receive something of value first. Yeah. For anyone in North America, you know, the tip culture is big. It's less so here, right? And so they did this study. So if someone comes and brings you the bill but doesn't give you a mint, then you would tip at a certain level. If someone comes, gives you a mint, brings the bill and gives you the mint, you would have leave a larger tip. But, right, if that person came, gave you the bill, put a mint there, walked away from the table, and then returned and said, actually, for you nice people, I'm going to give you 2, right? Then the amount of the tip like tripled, right? And it was this principle of reciprocity, right? If someone's given something to us, I feel that I have to give them more in return. And also in that third example of those 3, that's from Dr. Robert Cialdini's book. In that third example, it was because it felt personal and special, it became even more valuable, right? So reciprocity works really well. You know, and that's how thought leadership content works, being valuable. That's why marketers are creating those things. And check this out from Meet Edgar, right? Like, so this is off the Facebook page, you know, get our course on social media for free, do our free 5-day PR challenge, right? Like, so Meet Edgar are using this principle of reciprocity in building these courses and giving value to your audience before you ask, and actually taking that time, right? And so that's a really good example. I can see that from Melanie. I'd love to see an example of thought leadership content. Like, it's kind of happening right now, right? Like, this would be thought leadership content. I'll teach people stuff, and you know, someone will probably say, "Hey, can you help us with this stuff?" Right? Meet Edgar. They've got social media courses for free. They've got PR challenges for free. It's just really good examples. So whenever you see coaches doing this sort of thing, the reason that we give value first is a lot about that principle of reciprocity. It's why sales reps show up with free books and free pens and free backpacks. All of that's built around that principle of reciprocity as well. Juliet, how do you do that with a high dollar physical products? Let's jump back. Really good question. Let me think. Let's say it's a car, and I was thinking about reciprocity. So if I walked in and I was going to buy something expensive and I'm about to spend, like, you know, 50 grand on a car, and then how would reciprocity come into play, right? Like, so, like, in fact, when we had our third kid, I had to go buy a new van because all the kids don't fit in there, right? And so you get there, and then they sit you down in this nice room, and then they bought toys for our kids to play with, and they gave us they had like the fancy Nespresso coffee machine, so they'll make us a nice coffee before they then take us to see car and food. Yeah, so for us buying a car as part of that sales room experience, they were absolutely using reciprocity. Yeah, so they bring you coffee, bring the kids toys to play with. Ferrari, you know how you get like the hat and the key ring and all of that sort of accompaniments and the trappings of success that they give you, like all of that's actually based around reciprocity as well. Juliet, for high dollar physical products, maybe it's a course on how to use the thing, depending on what the product is. It could be that. So if it was, I'm making up stuff on the spot. If I was selling, there you go, Melanie's cosmetic surgeons, introduction procedures that lead to a higher sale. Yeah, so that's also using micro commitments, small things into big things. But for cosmetic surgeons, it might be running a course on how to recover, and it might be running a workshop on dispelling the myths around cosmetic surgery and all those sorts of things. Juliet, for jewelry, reciprocity could be, there's a few things for jewelry. So for Unity, like if anyone's buying your jewelry, you could partner with Pencils of Promise and help build a school somewhere. there. So a little bit could go to that because you believe in it. For reciprocity, you could offer to give them something. I'm not sure. It's like, I'll think about it. Hopefully I'll come up with it. Reciprocity for travel, that could be giving them, give them a list of restaurant recommendations at the new destination that they're thinking about going before they've ever asked for that. B2B, carry all of that swag stuff, right? Swag, like the branded pens and diaries and mouse mats and mugs, all of that is about reciprocity. And then there's this last principle. I'm going to go make sure I'm still going because we've only got a few minutes left. Let's talk about congruency, right? And so this is people like to remain true to who they are. And so when we identify as a particular type of person, we then feel a bit of pressure to live up to that identity. One of my team were like, I don't understand this congruency thing. And I was like, all right. I think, in fact, Shannon's here on the call. So I'm like, hey, Shannon, do you think of yourself as a generous person? And she's like, oh, there we go, right? So Shannon's there in the comments. I'm like, hey, Shannon, do you think of yourself as a generous person? And she's like, well, yeah, I do. I'm like, awesome. Can you donate to my charity, right? And so what happens is if I believe that I'm a certain type of person, particularly if I'm reminded that I think of myself as a certain type of person, I feel pressure to stay true to that thing, right? And so actually what I wanted to do for you there, if you can just see that ad, like how you can use this from a marketing perspective is that congruency is really effective when you're retargeting people, maybe someone that hasn't taken you up on an offer. And so you can see, like, so I just made like a nice little ad on the fly using that same template for Meet Edgar, right? So say someone had come to sign up for the 5-day PR challenge for Meet Edgar, but they didn't go through, they didn't opt in, they didn't finish, right? You can send them an email, you can run a social post like retargeting them and saying, hey, are you still 100% committed to doing that thing? Yeah, like, are you still committed to doing this for your tribe? And so that actually leverages this principle of congruency. It's like, well, actually, I do think of myself as this sort of person. I really should be doing this type of thing, right? So that's how you can then use that principle of congruency. JP, is congruency basically just identitarian micro commitment? Wow, that's now we're going deep. Kind of, yeah. I would say that identitarian stuff for me probably speaks to the unity. It's unity if you're in the group as part of your identity, congruency if you're that way as a person. But it overlaps, but it's not, I'd say, the same thing. Because JP, if I said, in fact, one of this study would probably be a really good example. So and this is actually from Cialdini's work. So they found that with the dentist, if the dentist says to you, hey, can you come in 4 weeks on Tuesday at 3 p.m. and you say yes, let's say that you've got a 30% or 40% dropout rate, whatever the math was. But instead, if they gave you the book and said, what day are you going to come? And you chose it, then they got like a 5% dropout rate. So when they made people choose the day that they would show up versus telling them when they would show up, people were a lot more likely to show up. And it wasn't because of the convenience thing. They did a few tests around it. It was actually just because if I chose the thing, then I wanted to stay true to that decision. So it's pressure to stay true to our decisions. You can see Denise there works for scheduling clients too, totally. I don't know if we've got time for this, but I would suggest that you go have a look afterwards. If you go to this page, ladyboss.com.challenge, after having been to this session, you will see all of these and the whole page is just these principles over and over and over. If you play the video, she's talking about the movement. She starts using likeness and unity when she talks about the small town background that she comes from. The page is covered in social proof, covered in testimonials. She's got 260,000 customers for various online programming and trains. Awesome, Megan. Thanks for checking that out. I'm putting that link there. Go check it out, right? And now that you've had this session, all you can see on that page is these different principles of sales psychology in action. And so with our 2 minutes left, right, how do you use this inside of Meet Edgar? Right. So the first thing that I would do is go have a look at my current social cues. I would go look at that wheel graphic that you'll find there in the slides and go, hey, how can I add some of these elements to my current text snippets just to get people to read things? How can I add it into those? The next thing that I'd do is I'd work through my different blogs and I'd work through my different videos and the ways that I'm sharing them and go, again, which tactics can I use here? Can I try using 4 or 5 of them or test them? Then what I'd do is say, all right, you know how you've got inside of Meet Edgar, so this is what we do with our clients, right? So let's say Wednesday is going to be your promotional day, right? That's the day that you're going to put up something a little bit more salesy in your social media queue. So, you know, block out Wednesday, call that the promotion day, then use that wheel and just try to come up with 2 or 3 different ideas, right? I'm going to use likeness and I'm going to go, hey, like, did you know that the 2,000 entrepreneurs just like you love our product? You should check it out too. And if it's Unity, it'd be like, hey, like, you know, to that the example before, sorry, I forgot your name, the writer. So, hey, if you're a lifelong learner like I am, you're going to love this. And that's using Unity and likeness as well, right? Often these things can overlap. But just like work through those different principles and then just come up with 1, 2, 3 ideas, whatever it is, jump in Canva, whatever you need to do, and just add those there into your queue, right? And now you can start to like work these principles in. And then what you can do is you can go have a look in your analytics later and just see which of those techniques are working and which ones are resonating with your audience. Everyone's different. And then keep your winners, right? So keep those winners out of those ones that you've tested that work really well, and then go and find some more, right? And start to scale those things in as well. So if you're keen on learning more, I promise you guys, if you stuck around to the end, you'd have a reading list. Here it is. So Influence and Persuasion are 2 books that I definitely suggest that you check out. This one's older, but it's like still super relevant and it's awesome. Persuasion, Brain Influence, Brain Cell, Friction, Choice Factory, Dan Ariely's Predicting to be Irrational, and also the Persuasion Code. They're the ones that I'd suggest that you check out as well. So I hope you guys all found that really useful. If you want, like, so what we do as a business is, you know, we help businesses acquire customers using digital marketing, and we build customer acquisition funnels. If any of you are familiar with funnels, what makes us unique is that we split test these things here. If anyone's keen, you can go to Eloquent, that link down the bottom. I think you can also now go to eloquent.com.au/training to make life easy. We've got like another session there if you want to learn more. It spends less on, it actually then focuses on understanding funnels. So it doesn't have all of the brain stuff. So, hey, Judy, yep, I'm Oz. I'm here in Sydney, Central Coast. But we work with people all over the world, right? A lot of Americans like us because the dollar's strong, so we can actually be pretty cost effective. But for Eloquent, yeah, go to /training. And then what we do there is actually break out how you would split test these things in a funnel. So we spend less time on how the brain works and then more time on like when you build a funnel and what a funnel is, how do you split test these to then like unlock performance across that funnel? There you go, Shannon's put it on the links. Thanks, man. Everyone, I hope you found that super useful. If you've got any questions on the content, reach out to me. Megan's going to share that with the slides are there so you can download them. She'll send out a recording, but I appreciate it. I can see everyone, man. That's thanks. That's one of the most valuable hours you've had in training this year. That's cool. I'll take a screen grab of that and use it as a social post. Thanks everyone for the comments. I super appreciate. I love doing this stuff, so I'm really happy to be here and help. I'm happy to answer any questions, Megan. I don't know what your etiquette is at this point.
Yeah, for sure. You're welcome to stay on if you guys still have a few questions. We will definitely be sending out the replay, guys. So look for the email for that a little bit later, and I'll put Sean's information in there so you guys can get in touch with him if your questions don't get answered. Yeah, for sure. If you guys have any questions about getting this set up in Meet Edgar or anything like that, I am the onboarding coach here. So pop into our office hours, email support@meetedgar.com, and I'm happy to chat through the Meet Edgar part as well. But yeah, the room is yours for as long as you want, and just ask your questions. Go for it.
Yeah. So I can see Denise there. Advice for medical testimonials are a problem with embarrassment. Yeah, I get that. I don't know exactly how I do it. So you'd have to ask people for their permission on how to do it, and you know what was important to them and those sorts of things. But like, we do see a lot of testimonials for medical, but yeah, it might just be a little bit harder to get people to say yes. But what you could do is do blind testimonials and have a page that shows a lot of them. That's probably what I'd try doing. Yeah, but yeah, I appreciate like testimonials are tricky in that space, so like trying to find some other ones as well. Hey, Megan, how easy is it for me to share a URL in Demio? Because
you can put the URL in the chat and it'll be clickable in the chat.
Yeah, cool. But they can't see what I'm seeing at the same time?
My mistake. You should be able to, if you click that little rectangle where you saw your slides, there should be a share your screen option for you.
I've got turn my cam off, view sharing options, share your screen. Perfect. Just like for anyone that's interested, I'll take 2 minutes and let's have a look at Lady Boss. Let me jump Lady Boss challenge. So I'll click here. Because I think they just like, this isn't one of our clients, by the way. I just think that she does an absolutely masterful job of applying these principles. Right now, I can only see my screen, so I'm relying on your voices. Probably Megan. Can you see my screen at the moment?
Yep, your screen sharing. You're good to go.
Yeah, perfect. And so if you have a look, let's go to the weight loss challenge, because this is one of her big drivers. Right. And so just now that you've been through this training, you can't unsee it, have a look at this. Right. So the first thing is if you've got striking visuals to make sure that it's appealing to your mammalian brain, your lizard brain, you've got this pink that really pops here. Then what she's doing is Lady Boss is all about this movement, and that whole thing around building a movement. Really the idea behind that is it's speaking to that principle of unity. We all want to be part of something bigger. I don't know if you can hear the audio here, but she's got this like origin story. You don't have to watch it, but she talks about the movements of Lady Boss using that principle of unity, and then starts talking about her own background, right? And she's building likeness as well. The reason it's only $1 to click, $1 is the principle of micro commitment. And then what you can see here, right? All social proof. People like me are doing these things. So this is social proof and likeness. All of these testimonials, people like me, as featured on, right? So that's there deliberately for authority. American Business Awards, that's there because of authority. Enrollment opens on August 17th. Hurry with a countdown timer is scarcity, right? So all of that top of the page is just sales psychology after sales psychology, all being used. Then, this visualization of showing you what's there, that's appeal to the lizard brain because you can appreciate the design and it likes that things are there. Sign up now, super small field for micro commitments, scarcity again, testimonials again, more visualization of then and now it's more sort of then going to the rational brain. So once it's appealed to those things at an emotional level of unity, similarity, micro commitments, striking design, more social proof, more authority, then it flows. It's only after that that it then tries to talk to the rational brain, which is like, hey, you're going to get the step-by-step playbook, right? So that's when it works through these things. Again, more social proof happening here, more social proof and authority. Then there's some bonuses so you don't miss out. Scarcity again. This our amygdala wants us to not make mistakes. So that's why there's the money back guarantee and the 100% satisfaction, right? All of the testimonials. And then the FAQs at the bottom is then appeasing that rational brain, right? And then the $1 click at the bottom and a few more rewards. And so the reason I wanted to show you that is that when you start to look at these super successful sales pages, and all of the ads and everything that wrap around this will be exactly the same. Great, effective, high performance marketing it's using these principles over and over and over and over again. So I'm going to jump back in so you can see me there. But it's just, hopefully you guys found that a super example. Go check it out. But once you know these principles and you go look at it in marketing, then you can see it everywhere. So do the same for your business, right? Go have a look at your product, look at your brand, look at your business, and find some of those awesome places that you can use them as well. Amazing, guys. Thank you so much. Megan, thank you for having me. I really appreciate everyone's time. Reach out to me, connect. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can email me. Melanie, great example. And any of the in the same league. There's a ton. Like, I don't want to share all of our clients without asking their permission first, but mostly just like just have a look at them now. Ellen, I don't have any wedding examples. But now that you know, like as soon as you go onto other people's pages, you can see. And now that you know, that you can make sure that you're building it into your own as well. Awesome, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. There you go. Yeah, from Rich. Sean@eloquent.com.au if you want to drop me a line or anything. That's awesome.
This was
Thanks
amazing.
for having me,
I
Megan.
learned so much myself, and I know I would want those slides too. So thank you guys for letting us know. I'll send those out and let us know if you have any other questions. Thanks so much, Sean.
Thanks. Speak soon. Bye.